Hey guys, what is going on? Inception here and welcome to another video. Today we're going to be doing the video on explaining the dynamic tactics and how instructions and tactics will basically play with each other, right? So right off the bat, we have the first defensive style, right? So the first three slots you have defensive style, which is constant pressure, drop back, balanced, and pressure on heavy touch. And there's also press after possession loss too. So there's a couple of options that you got here, right? So obviously at the top you can see that they actually tell you exactly which what each one does, right? So with drop back you have this tactical preserve your team shape and will offer your opponents more possession. Your strikers will stay passive and you may find yourself having less attacking options when you have the ball. So if you want to choose to use a drop back option on your team and you really want your striker to play to that defensive style, what you would do, right, is you would go to your striker and you would actually tell him to come back on the defense and play like a false nine. Now, if you tell him to play like a false nine and you tell him to come back in defense, he will play like a midfielder, so he will be closer to the middle of the box and he'll come back on the defense quicker. Now, obviously, you're going to be missing Aguero as a striker presence up top, but maybe the counterattack will work really well for you, right? So for you to be able to use that style and use that instruction to the best of its ability, you also have to use the instructions with the tactics. So like I said, if your tactics are on drop back and you really want your striker to drop back, you have to put the instruction on your striker to be a false nine and to come back in defense. If you tell him to get in behind, he'll be further away. If you tell him to be on mixed attack, he'll be further away or he'll be close. If you tell him to be a target man would also be a very good option, but he'll still be kind of up there as a striker. And then the false nine, you can see, drops into the midfield to create attacking space for teammates and has time and space to dribble or pick up passes, right? So that's what the false nine will do. So it'll make you come closer to the midfield so that you can play to that style more. So remember that the instructions of your players are still very important to the tactics that you use, right? We also have, so with drop back, you can also have your instructions to be on stay back while attacking with the center mids. So right here we have get forward because that's Man City's default tactics. If you get to Fernandinho here, you can use stay back while attacking, which is already set on him right over here, right? Stay back while attacking. They will play to that tactic more than anything, right? Because you have to remember, right? If you use stay back while attacking, but you change that to a get forward, it's going to be an in-between of him getting forward, but him also dropping back really quickly. So try out the balance and see what works out best for you in terms of having your players move forward and come back and see what works best for you, right? So stay back while attacking the center mids will allow them to play more to the tactic that you're asking them to play. But then you can also tell them to get forward, and you have to find the balance because each player, right, has their own work rates. If I can go and search that up right now. Each player has their own work rates. So if you see with Aguero has high attacking work rates and medium defensive work rates. If you tell someone like David Silva to push forward with high attacking work rates and medium defensive work rates, he will be slightly more attacking than defensive because of the instructions that you have set on him if you tell him to push forward. So get forward with these tactics, which is drop back, he will still attack a little bit more. So he'll kind of contradict a little bit the defensive tactics that you want to put on him, right? So you got to be very careful, man. Instructions and tactics are going to be very, very important with each other. Obviously, if you tell your wingers as well to drop back, which is over here. It's somewhere over here. Come back on defense, then they will play to that tactic more, and you'll be very, very defensive. Now, if you do all of this, right, where you tell all your players to stay back while attacking, you won't really have any attacking options, but you'll have a lot of players at the back, but then it'll be basically like a boring play style where you're going to be defending the entire time. And it's the play style that is probably looked down upon the most if you play this defensive. So not necessarily an ideal thing to do if you want to try to have fun. Balanced defensive style is a very nice one. A balanced style where your team presses the ball to the middle of the pitch and your team's shape is neutral. So it's nice to have a neutral team shape because you want to know where each player is in the pitch. So for instance, I like using the 4-2-3-1. I like knowing that the CDMs are going to be in the CDM areas, the left backs in the left backs area, so on and so forth, right? Depending on the instructions. With the CDMs, right, if you were to switch to a 4-2-3-1, with the CDMs, their default is actually set to cover the wing. So if you really want them to play to that tactic more on the balance, you would tell them to stay central so that so that you know that they're always going to be in the CDM position, right? The reason why the default is cover the wing is because it defends the open wing if teammate isn't marking, right? So the reason why that's good is because a lot of people will always make those extra Y passes or A passes to the side so they can do a nice little driven shot across goal and score opportunities like that. So you have to be very careful with those types of situations. You never really want to get yourself into a situation where you're too vulnerable on the sides, because then you got to create a balance for yourself, right? You either got to have your center mids to cover the center, right? Or your CDMs to cover the center. For some reason, my ear is killing me right now. For your CDMs to cover the center, but then you also have your left cam and your right cam to come back, right? So you'll have a balance on the sides, you'll have a balance in the middle, and then you'll have a balance pushing forward as well. Now, obviously, when you're pushing forward, your left and right cam won't always be there. So for me personally, I like to keep them unbalanced. But it really depends on how the game is kind of going. So remember that's going to be very important too with defensive style, right? Defensive style, everything's gonna play a part with each other, right? So you just gotta be very careful with these. So in regards to the width depends on the play style of your opponent again, right? So if you realize that he's playing more to the sides, you obviously want to kind of keep it. You don't want to push it too much. I never really feel like people should push this too much, right? But I feel like with the width, you want to keep it around this general area or right here if someone is really exploiting the sides. If you use this type of width for a custom tactic, make sure that your CDMs are on stay central and your left mids and right mids come back in the defense, right? So that could be one of your defensive tactics, right? So if you press L2, you can decide whatever you want to do with these formations. To be honest, you can have like five defensive tactics if you really want to, because the default is already balanced, right? You can see on the top left it says balance, but these ones you can do whatever you want with them. Even just because it says ultra attacking doesn't mean I have to play ultra attacking, right? So if I really want to change it up, the default will be constant pressure, but I don't have to do constant pressure. I could go back to balance and being like whatever I want to be. So if you remember what your tactics are set to, it doesn't necessarily have to be ultra attacking. Should it be ultra attacking though? Yes, it should be, because there's going to be certain situations where your opponent is going to hold the ball in their own box and they're going to want to waste time. And if someone wants to do that against you, then obviously with the offensive style, a possession one isn't too bad. Or not possession, but balance is probably the best one to go in that situation. But defensive depth, you really want to push that up, right? And you want to be able to get that ball back if you really need a goal back, right? So it's all about like a chess game and figuring out what your opponents want to do. Maybe keeping it more narrow would be ideal. Maybe keeping it right in the middle, or not directly in the middle, but at like a 6 in the width will also help in that situation. Changing your formations will also help too. So if you want to use a formation that will try to get the ball back as much as possible, there's the new formation, which is the 4-2-4, if I can find that. So that if someone's trying to waste time in their own box, your attackers will always be putting pressure. The cool thing about the 4-2-4 as well, if I can find it, which is this one, the cool thing about this formation as well is that if someone is putting a lot of pressure on your defense and you yourself are calm and composed when they're doing the constant if you notice that their tactics is set to constant pressuring, what the ideal thing actually is to do is to tell all your attackers to stay forward, right? So you'll see that it's going to be one of the options here, conservative, get into the box. I think these ones don't necessarily stay forward. Which one's the option for the stay forward? The striker's got to have stay forward. I forgot which one it was though. Get in behind, false 9, stay forward. So it's defensive support, right? So defensive support over here, you can tell all your players on the defensive support to stay forward. And what this will do, right, is that if someone is playing really aggressive towards you, right, you can tell all your 4 players to stay forward, but then you can also have a nice balance with your team, right? So you can tell them to stay forward, but then you can also ask your strikers, or one of your strikers, not necessarily Aguero, but maybe a Raheem Sterling, to play like a false 9, right? So that way, if you have stay forward and you have your attackers playing like a false 9, you can literally just cross the ball to them when someone is trying to apply all this pressure against you and try to score opportunities that way. So that's going to be also very nice as well. Like I said, your ultra attacking tactics doesn't have to be ultra attacking, but it is more ideal to make it ultra attacking, right? So I'll go back to the balanced the balanced instructions and tactics here. So that's what's important with the width. The depth, the depth just depends on the situation of the game. I keep the default normally around this area right here. I feel like this is a pretty good balance in terms of attacking presence, defensive presence, middle presence. But if I really need a goal back, then obviously I'll push my depth way higher if I switch that to an ultra attacking type tactic, right? So it just depends on the situation. Dropping deep isn't necessarily a bad idea to do, but the problem with dropping deep is that you also invite a lot of pressure. So if someone's really like plowing with really offensive pressure against you, you have to be very careful with what they're doing, right? Because then they can easily do some long shots against you. If they have a lot of players in the box and you don't have a balance for it, they'll be able to score headers against you as well. So you just got to be very careful with how you set up your team when you want to be either really defensive or really attacking, right? So with offensive styles, for the other defensive styles. So there's balance, there's pressure on heavy touch. Pressure on heavy touch is nice. Your team pressures their shape until the opportunity to pressure appears. Pressure when the opposition takes a heavy touch, it's a loose ball or controlling a difficult pass facing their own goal. So the nice thing about this, right, is that it's basically a slower version of your players using constant pressure, right? If they take a poor touch, all your players move. So you have to be very careful with that, because if all your players move, that also means that if their tactics is set to stay forward on their attacks and all your players pressure forward, all they have to do is take one dribble, cross it into the middle of the box, and they'll be gone for an attacking opportunity. So again, be very careful of those situations too. Press after possession loss. After your team loses possession of the ball, your teammates will press the ball for approximately 7 seconds. This will affect player fatigue, and your players can be out of position if you don't win it back during this time. So, obviously, if you lose possession of the ball, but you're really good at attacking and you really need a goal back, then press after possession loss would be an ideal thing to use. But I think that the best thing to use when you really need a goal back is definitely constant pressuring, because that's when you're really committing your players forward to get a goal back so you can score whatever opportunity you need to score if you're down a goal, right? So it's all about a balance, right? You can also have the drop back, like I said, but the drop back will also be very, very defensive, and it'll be, I wouldn't necessarily say it would be easier to score, because it really depends on how the other person sets up their team to score opportunities, right? This is why I think this year, and as well as other years of FIFA, physical presence up top as a striker is going to be incredibly important, so that you can win headers in the air. They need to be good at long shots. Their shooting needs to be incredible. They need to be really, really strong players and really good at dribbling, right? So the players like the legend players, Hullet, Ronaldo, all those guys are going to be really effective in these certain situations if you really, really need to get a goal back. So that's where it would end up there for defensive style. So the default that I normally use when I start off the team, if it's a 4-2-3-1, is I'll keep it around this general area right here, or just this one right here for the defense, because obviously people like to attack the sides. Mostly the good players like to attack the sides because they always realize that they can make that extra pass. But if you notice that someone's using like a 4-1-2-1-2 or something, you can make your formation more narrow, and then you can have your depth to be, again, this general area. That's usually where I use it, and it would work out really nicely for you. So just think about every scenario that you're going to come up against in FIFA and try to use those scenarios to your advantage so that you can score more opportunities and defend against more opportunities, right? But the default that I normally set up with is usually around this area. And then the defensive style I keep on balanced until I realize that I need a certain type of tactic to attack and a certain type of tactic to defend, right? Offensive styles, possession is okay. Possession is okay if you're really calm and composed and you really want to be honest, waste time or play like Barcelona or anything like that. I wouldn't necessarily recommend using possession. The players do come closer to you, but you can see that the instruction itself says that your team takes longer to build up, right? So balanced is just a combination of everything, right? So they'll do supporting runs, they'll create certain attacking spaces because you need to score goals, right? Obviously, your players need to score for you to win games, so you can't always be super defensive and hope to God that you get a goal, although it will work at times, right? So I like offensive style to be unbalanced the most. That's a combination of everything, but again, if I really feel like I need to really attack against the person, maybe I would use a fast build-up so that when I do get the possession of the ball on constant pressure and fast build-up, my players are gunning forward to try to get the ball back, and not to get the ball back, but try to get a goal back so that, we're either tied or we're winning the game, right? So Offensive style on fast buildup will be more useful, I would say, for the attacking and ultra attacking sense, right? So if you're a goal down, or if you realize that someone's really overcommitting on the attack and you're confident in your defending and you want to overcommit with your attack as well, it would also be a very ideal way to play. So width will depend on your formation, I think, right? So if you're using a 4-1-2-2, maybe you don't want it to be too wide, right? You want your attacking style to be a little bit more narrow because that's where you want your players to be. Your center mids and your center mids, you don't want them to act like left mids and right mids, because if you do that, then you're going to be more vulnerable in the middle, but that's the whole point of using the 4-1-2-2, right? So with fast buildup or with balanced buildup, what's the other one? It was fast buildup and long ball. Long ball, it just means that your players will make more runs, which, to be honest, could be really helpful depending on the situation. But this also means that your players run away from you, and you could be offside if they do the passes, if they do the shots, right? So long ball is effective, again, if someone's putting a lot of pressure against you. So again, another tactic to figure out. To be honest, if you could remember like 8 of your tactics, it would be awesome, right? So right now we only have a balance of 5, which, to be honest, if you put more than 5, it'd be overpowered. But 5 is a really good balance to be able to do everything. But there's going to be so many situations where you're going to remember exactly what your tactics is set up like and how you're going to want to set it up when someone's playing a certain way against you, right? So, yeah, so normally I would keep this on balance in the beginning to create a good balance for my team. If I'm using a 4-2-3-1 and I want my team to be wide, but I also have the support of the 2 CDMs, the cam, and the striker, obviously I want to have a little bit of width, right? I think over here there's a good balance between this one and this one. These are the 2 that I switched between right now and trying to figure out which one I like the most. But it's good to have width because, like I said, a player who will know how to attack will love to attack those sides, right? So you have to be very careful with that extra pass, right? Because your fullbacks in FIFA will commit more downwards or more upwards, leaving more space for the wingers to make those runs in behind on the side. So if you keep them unbalanced, it will be very good. If you keep the cam and tell him to, I believe I think they actually added a new tactic. No, it's the interception. So you could tell him to go into the box for the cross to add this extra pressure, but it would be more ideal to go into the box for the cross if it was someone like Ruud Gullit, right? Because obviously he'd be a boss at winning the ball in the air. And most fullbacks in FIFA are not necessarily tall, right? You're gonna have to get those legends and stuff for you to be able to block those against really good players. So be careful with people crossing the ball a lot against you, right? So for me personally, if I come up against someone that has a really solid team and I notice that they're crossing a far post a lot, I'm definitely going to switch to a 4-2-3-1 wide formation, have my left mids and right mids come back in the defense, stay back while attacking my fullbacks, and then my striker, will have to do the work by himself because you don't want to concede those far post crosses. So you have to be very careful with those as well, right? So that's the offensive style, and that's the width, right? So again, depends on the formation you're using. Not everything will be good to be used the same. Your tactics will need to be changed with whatever formation you're using. There's not one tactic this year that's going to work with every formation, right? You have to figure out, or there might be, if it's your play style, it'll match your play style, but you have to figure out on your own what you feel like you're going to want. Players in the box. So when in the crossing zone, ask your players to make lots of runs into the box. This could be effective to get numbers in the box, but could leave you vulnerable for a counterattack. So obviously, right, if you have players in the box, a good balance, even if you need a goal back, is probably around this general area right here. So you'll still have 2-3 players making the run inside the box to put the pressure on the back 4, but you'll also still have your center mids to stay on the edge of the box so that you can pop off some long shots into the box. So you need to figure out with your attacking instructions what you want to do if you really need a goal back. So you can be the type of player that if you have all the physical, tall, strong dudes that is good at heading in the air, obviously you want to have high on players in the box for crossing. But also remember, right, that players in the box for crossing being high will also relate to the instruction of your CDMs to stay back while attacking, and the other one is stay on the edge of the box, which they don't have on the CDMs. I think that's more for the center mids. So if you say stay back while attacking, but you have them on cover center, as someone like Fernandinho will play a little bit more to his instruction because I believe he is medium-high work rates. Yeah, so he's medium-high work rate, so he'll play more to his instruction, but he'll still linger around that area just outside the 18-yard box so that he can try to score a goal for you as well. So again, having players in the box will depend on your play style. If you have all the right players in every position for you to be able to cross this ball into the back of the back post or whatever it is, because if someone does not change their defensive tactics when you're just spamming them with crosses or players in the box, then you're obviously going to get one or two of your opportunities, and players are going to be free inside the box as well. So be very careful with those as well. I like to have it around this general area or this general area, because obviously I hate always getting counterattacked in previous FIFAs. I always felt like it was the most unskilled way to score. So whenever I realize I'm getting counterattacked, I will change my tactics right away. I'll be really, really low on crossing so that I cannot get counterattacked. So it just really depends, again, on your play style. So corners, I don't know how the full game is yet, right? But with corners, the near post corner is still very effective in this game, right? So with corners, if you want to have it on a 3 or a 4, your player will always be in that general position so that he can score that near post cross. Obviously, when you're defending the corner, you should always switch to the guy near post so that you can push him to the guy that's attacking near post so that you don't concede those goals, even though it's still very effective, right? So corners, I like to keep it probably on a 1 or a 2, to be honest, because the reason why I keep the corners on a 1 is because in previous years of FIFA, I never liked getting counterattacked again from the corners, right? I never took corners in previous years of FIFA because of counterattacks. So now with this year, because I always pass the ball short, I will always have a man right next to me so that I don't get counterattacked if I lose possession of the ball. Because even if you have 1 on corners, once you pass the ball and get just outside the 18-yard box, your players will play to their work rates, instructions, and tactics on the offense. So from the corners, obviously it'll be like this, but from the offensive with these balanced with the players in the box, they will start playing to those tactics as well once you pass the ball. So be very mindful of that, right? If you have players in the box set to this or this, if you pass the ball on the sides and you go back, your players will still make the run into the box because that's what your tactics is set to. So just keep that in mind when you are doing the corners as well. So corners, I have it on 1. Free kicks, I have it on 1. You guys know why I have my free kick set to 1. It's because I use the free kick tactic. If someone defends against the free kick tactic, which is so easy to defend against, you just choose someone from the wall, take them out, and then just block that general running area for someone to attack against you when they're using that free kick tactic. So with the free kick set to that, I'm just able to use whatever free kick tactic I want to use and not have players in the box, because I literally never want them in the box, because I have, in previous years of FIFA, I barely ever crossed it into the box from normal free kicks, and I've barely ever taken an actual free kick because of how effective the free kick tactics normally are. So that's what I would prefer to do. So that's why I use the free kicks on 1 and 1. So that's pretty much dynamic tactics explained. Everything will play a part with each other. Instructions and tactics will contradict each other, so you have to be very careful with what you set up on both, because work rates, instructions, tactics will all go together, right? So you have to find the right balance that will make your team move the best way possible. But that is going to conclude the video for today, guys. I hope you guys did enjoy it. If you guys did, please drop a thumbs up on the video. Definitely helps out the channel a lot. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.